I once met this dude named Matt when I was out at a bar with some friends during a warm summer night. We were a big group, kind of scattered throughout the place, typical weekend vibes. At some point, I found myself standing at the bar next to this guy. Tall, clean cut, friendly energy. He glanced at the Cubs game on TV, made a comment, and we just naturally started vibing. Matt had that kind of instant likability factor. Not too overbearing, not shy either, just easy to talk to. We laughed about some plays in the game, traded stories about bad bar food, and time just sort of blurred. My friends had mostly wandered off to other parts of the bar, or were mingling elsewhere, so it ended up being just me and Matt for most of the conversation. It felt like we were both killing time, but genuinely getting along. Eventually, we exchanged Instagrams. His profile seemed normal. Well-lit selfies, travel pictures, a couple of gym shots, and random memes. He had a decent amount of followers too, which gave him this aura of being somewhat plugged in. You know how people look online, social, always doing something. I didn't think much of it. We parted ways soon after that, and I went to go find my group again. Honestly, when two guys randomly befriend each other at a bar, the odds of ever texting or hanging out again are pretty low. It's always this loose, yeah bro, hit me up sometime, kind of deal that vanishes into the ether by morning. That's just how it goes. But weirdly, Matt didn't vanish. The very next day, Saturday, I went out to this outdoor restaurant bar on the water for my friend Tyler's birthday. It was the kind of place with boat docks, string lights, live music. Very summery, very Instagrammable. We were all outside, mid-toast, singing some awful rendition of Happy Birthday when I posted a quick clip to my Instagram story. About an hour later, I was hanging near the railing with a beer when I felt a tap on my shoulder. I turned around, and it was Matt. Big smile, same chilled-out demeanor. He dapped me up and said this was one of his favorite Saturday night hangouts. At first I was like, whoa, small world, but something about it felt a little too perfect. I brushed it off. I introduced him to the group and casually said, "You guys remember Matt from last night?" Some of them kind of nodded. Others gave polite smiles. No one really knew him, but they didn't question it either. We were all in good spirits, and Matt blended into the vibe with ease. He stuck around for a while, and we all drank and laughed late into the night. I didn't think much of it then. Honestly, the more the merrier. A week or two later, he hit me up and invited me to play golf. I suck at golf, but I've always wanted to get better, and I figured, why not? It was early on a Sunday, and I couldn't convince any of my friends to join. Everyone was either too hungover or uninterested, so it ended up being just me and Matt. It was a casual 9-hole session that lasted about 2 hours. Matt was decent. Not a pro or anything, but clearly more practiced than me. We shared some laughs over missed swings, cursed a few balls that landed in the water, and grabbed some food afterward before I headed home. It felt like a normal hang. Still, something about the way he always ended up being available when no one else was gave me pause, but not enough to think anything deeper. Fast forward another week or two, and Matt hit me with a bigger invite. A weekend hiking trip in Arizona. Said he was planning to hit the Grand Canyon and do some trails, and had an Airbnb booked. Arizona and the Grand Canyon were bucket list places for me, and the timing lined up perfectly with a break I had from work. I asked a few of my friends if they wanted to come too, but I got the usual excuses. Can't get time off, need to save money, bad timing. I asked Matt if any of his boys were coming along, and he said no. He was just planning to go solo, and thought I might want to tag along. I paused. I realized I had never actually met any of Matt's friends. For a guy who had a pretty socially active Instagram, it was strange how solo he seemed in real life. Still, he came off as normal enough, and I figured maybe he was just one of those people who didn't post their real life all the time. I said yes. We flew out on August 15th, returning the 18th. We landed in Phoenix at night. Matt had rented a car, and we made a stop for food and drinks before heading to the Airbnb. It was a small, modern-looking place tucked away just outside the city. When we got there, it was already late. We cracked open a couple of beers and talked for a bit. That's when I realized there was only one bed. I hadn't thought to confirm the sleeping arrangements beforehand, assuming it'd be a 2-bedroom. When I brought it up, Matt casually pointed at the couch I was sitting on and said, "It's a pull-out, bro. Relax. I'm not charging you for the Airbnb or anything." I laughed it off. It seemed generous and, honestly, free lodging in Arizona. Hard to complain. I pulled out the bed, set up some sheets, and went to sleep. In the middle of the night, I woke up to footsteps. I'm a light sleeper, and the soft creak of the floorboards was enough. I saw Matt walking to the kitchen in the dark for water, nothing too odd. I rolled over and went back to sleep. The next morning, Matt woke me up early. The sky was this endless blue, sun already baking the roads. We headed straight for the Grand Canyon, and I'll never forget the sheer size of it. It doesn't look real. We hiked the Bright Angel Trail, and I realized how out of shape I was. Matt was practically jogging, laughing, telling me to catch up while I was drenched in sweat. Still, the views were breathtaking. We took breaks, snapped amazing pictures, and soaked in the silence. That kind of silence you only get in nature, where it almost hums in your ears. Eventually, we made it back to the car and hit up a deli before heading back to Phoenix. I was exhausted, took a midday nap, while Matt played music quietly in the background. That night, true to form, he wanted to go out again. I didn't really want to drink, but I gave in. We bar hopped through a few local spots, and somehow I got more drunk than him, even though we drank equally. I remember us leaving the car parked on some street because we were too drunk to drive and calling an Uber. Back at the Airbnb, he blasted music briefly while I plugged in my phone by the couch. I must have passed out immediately. A few hours later, I woke up, mouth dry, bladder full. When I got up, I noticed something odd. My phone wasn't where I'd left it. The charging cable was still plugged into the wall, but the phone was gone. Confused, I went to the bathroom, but midstream, I heard a door quietly close. I tried Matt's bedroom door. It was locked. I knocked. No answer. I told myself I must have been overthinking it. I went back to sleep. The next morning, I woke up with a pounding headache. The first thing I noticed was my phone, sitting on the table next to the couch, unplugged. I was sure I'd left it charging on the floor next to the couch. I figured maybe I had moved it when I was drunk and just didn't remember. That day, we didn't do anything strenuous. Mostly driving around, seeing Phoenix, walking through botanical gardens, low-effort stuff. I didn't want to drink, but Matt convinced me again. It turned into another long night, and this time, when we got back, Matt insisted I take the bed. Said it was fair since he got it the past 2 nights. I didn't argue. I brought my bag into the room, shut the door but didn't lock it. The door didn't really have a secure lock anyway. One of those knobs you could open with a coin or butter knife if you really wanted to. I woke up sometime in the night, not sure what from. That strange sensation of waking up because something felt off, even if you didn't consciously register what. I reached for my phone. It was gone again. The cord was hanging off the nightstand, unplugged. My heart sank. I got out of bed and looked on both sides, and when I rounded the corner of the bed, I screamed. Matt was lying face down on the floor next to me, completely motionless like he'd been there for a while. I shouted, "What are you doing?" He slowly stirred, looking confused, rubbing his eyes like he'd just woken up. He mumbled something about being so drunk he forgot I was in the bed and crashed on the floor. But he wasn't near the door. He was on the far side of the bed. I accused him of taking my phone. He played dumb, saying maybe it slipped under the bed. He got down, reached underneath, and miraculously pulled it out like it had just rolled there. I didn't believe him. There was a shift in my perception of him at that moment. Something in his expression, his casual tone, like he'd rehearsed the reaction. I said I'd sleep on the couch instead, but he insisted I stay and left the room. This time, I locked the door. Hours later, I woke up again. He was standing at the foot of the bed, his silhouette just there in the dark. I didn't scream right away. It was like my brain hadn't caught up to the threat. He sat down and began rubbing my foot. That's when I lost it. I screamed and pushed him off the bed. He didn't say a word, just stood and walked out like nothing had happened. I got up, started throwing my stuff in my bag, toothbrush half wrapped in a towel, toiletries shoved in pockets. Matt sat on the couch, just watching, silent. I called an Uber, heart pounding, and got to the airport before sunrise. I couldn't sleep. My thoughts were racing. I paid extra to move seats on the plane just to avoid sitting near him. I didn't tell anyone until later that day. When I did, my friends weren't even surprised. That dude was always alone, they said. One friend pointed out that him showing up at Tyler's party was probably because he saw my Instagram story. That gave me chills. Stalker behavior. I blocked him on everything.
Before I did though, I checked an old Instagram post of his, one where he was with a group of guys, no tags. I found a comment from one of the dudes in the photo, so I DM'd him. I asked if he was still friends with Matt. The guy replied in less than 10 minutes, "Nah, guy's a freak, run away." I asked what he meant, and he said a bunch of guys used to hang with Matt until they had to cut him off, one by one. Creepy behavior, weird phone stuff, boundary issues. He told me, guys should be in jail. I didn't want to believe it, but everything suddenly made sense. The fake normalcy, the fake social life, the timing of his appearances, the missing phone. Matt wasn't just a weird dude, he was calculated, and I had let my guard down completely. That trip could have gone very differently, and I still think about what might have happened if I hadn't woken up when I did. That weekend changed how I travel and who I trust. I don't care how normal someone seems. If you've never met their friends, seen how they act when sober, or felt entirely safe around them, listen to that gut instinct. I almost didn't.